Washington has been the most underrated team in college football all season long. And when you look at the odds for who has the best chance to win a national championship, Alabama, Michigan, and Texas all have better odds than Washington. They have the fourth best odds to win it all this year. And once again, don't underrate and underestimate this Washington team like how Oregon did in the Pac-12 Championship when they were a 10-point underdog and they ended up smacking those boys. This is a good enough team that not only are they good enough to beat Texas, but they can beat Alabama and Michigan and whoever they potentially could face off against in the national championship if they make it through the Longhorns. And the reason why I'm really high on Washington is because, first of all, they got one of the best coaching staffs in all of college football. Kalen DeBoer, he's only lost 2 games in the 2 seasons that he's been the head coach of the Huskies. And he hasn't lost a game in the year pretty much. And at Fresno State, he went 9-3 his final season. And when he was coaching NAIA ball, he didn't really lose too many games there. This is somebody who is a proven winner. He makes really good in-game adjustments, and he does a really good job at making sure that his teams are well prepared in big games. He also has a really great offensive coordinator in Ryan Grubb. If you guys don't remember, when Nick Saban was doing his offensive coordinator search, he interviewed Ryan Grubb. And the reason why he didn't hire Ryan Grubb is because him and Nick Saban has some differences with how the offense was going to run. So he returns back to Washington, and he's one of the best play callers in the sport. And I don't get how he wasn't a finalist for the Burroughs Award, which goes to the best assistant coach in America, because he definitely is one of them. And when you look at how well this coaching staff is, you are going to be in a situation where you shouldn't end up being in any game that you end up getting blown out in. Because when you got a really good coaching staff, that can be the difference. Not all the time being talent. You see, Washington, people's arguments for why Washington won't win it all is because, they're the least talented team in the playoffs. Based on what? Because their coaching staff is really great, and the talent that they have on this team, especially at wide receiver, is fantastic. Nobody in this playoffs has as deep as a wide receiving core as what Washington has outside of Texas. And even then, I still would take Washington's receivers because they got 3 potential first-rounders starting for them at wideout. You got Rome Odunze, who possibly is going to be a top 15 selection in the 2024 NFL draft. You got Jalen McMillan. You got Jalen Polk. There's just so much talent at wide receiver that there's not a lot of defenses in the playoffs that are going to be able to match up well when you got to defend against 3 elite wide receivers. Most teams only have 2 high-end corners. Most teams don't have 3 deep at cornerback that's good enough to defend against this wide receiving core of Washington. Then you got Michael Penix slinging the football. Michael Penix has been one of the best quarterbacks in college football ever since he first transferred to Washington, has one of the strongest arms in the nation, makes great football, makes great decisions with the football. He's also a pretty good athlete as well. My only concern with Michael Penix is that you need him to start the game out fast. There's been times this season when he's got out the slow starts for Washington. Now, you can say that may be due to the weather. Maybe he was playing through an injury, but he gets better as the game goes along, right? And with these receivers, there's no reason why Washington's passing attack should struggle against any team they go up against in the playoffs, especially Texas in the first round. Texas' biggest weakness on defense are their cornerbacks. And with how good this wide receiving core is, you could definitely expect for Michael Penix to have a big day against that Longhorns defense. Now, defensively, that's where a lot of people are going to kind of sour over picking Washington to win it all this year. And their defense isn't as talented as what Texas, Michigan, or Alabama's is. But I will say this, over the second half of this season, this defense has played way better than what they did to start the season off. And actually, this defense is a reason why they still are undefeated. You see, this defense was able to keep Oregon State from winning the game. They also helped them survive an upset potentially against Arizona State. This defense has came through for Washington in plenty of big situations. And when you look at how they played in the Pac-12 Championship, that was probably the best defense that Oregon has ever faced off against during their 2-year stretch with Bo Nix. There hasn't really been a defense that has been able to have the level of success against Oregon that Washington has been able to. They were able to get pressure on Bo Nix. They were able to limit the amount of explosive runs that Oregon had with Bucky Irving. This is a Washington defense that's playing their best football. They may not be as talented as what the Crimson Tide and Michigan and Texas are, but don't sleep on this defense. They're good enough to get a couple of key stops and give the ball back to their offense. People make it seem like you need to have an elite defense to win a national championship. You just need to have a top 50 defense and a defense that's good enough to get you a couple of key stops here and there, and that's what Washington has. When you look at their offensive line, probably one of the best in all of college football, and they probably got the second best offensive line in the playoffs this season, behind either Michigan or Texas. But I say that Washington's offensive line is better than Texas. They only gave up 10 sacks this year. Some people say that Texas has a better offensive line than Washington, but I would digress on that. I'll take Washington's offensive line over Texas. I don't really know about Michigan. Their offensive line is just built differently. But this offensive line is good enough that Michael Penix is going to have time to throw the football on any defense that he's going to be faced off against. Texas has a really good pass rush. I think this offensive line should be able to neutralize that. Same thing with Michigan and Alabama. Plus, this is also a really good pass blocking offensive line and a really good offensive line when it comes to opening up holes in the running game. And you see, when you think of Washington, you don't think of a team that is really great running the football because statistically, they don't rank all that high in rushing yards per game. But if you watch this team, you will know that whenever they want to run the football, they have success doing it. It's just that who the hell needs to run the football when you can air the football out 40, 50 times a game because you got Michael Penix at quarterback and 3 talented wide receivers that are NFL caliber? Washington is being severely slept on when it comes to their chances of winning it all this year. With how deep they are at wide receiver, there aren't too many teams in the nation that can match up with this wide receiver room at corner. And plus, with Michael Penix at the helm, as long as this dude can get out to a fast start and he's playing his best football, you're going to have a hard time getting this offense off the field. And defensively, like I said, they don't got an outstanding defense, but this is a top 50 defense that's good enough for them to win it all. LSU didn't have a top 50 defense when they won a national championship in 2019. And this Washington team, I think, is a lesser version of what 2019 LSU was, with Dylan Johnson at running back, with all the talent that they have at wide receiver, how good their offensive line is. Not saying they are exactly the same team as LSU when they won it all in 2019, but they're really similar. They're like 50 to 60% of what that 2019 LSU squad was when they had Joe Burrow at quarterback. So if you're sleeping on this Washington team, you might want to wake up on them because they definitely are good enough to beat any team in the playoffs this year. I don't get why the odds for them winning it all this year is so low. And people have been sleeping on this team nearly every single week after they beat Oregon the first time they played. Listen, style points doesn't determine how good a team is. You got to judge a team by how well coached they are, which Kalen DeBoer always has this team ready to play. They play their best football in the biggest games when the lights are the brightest. And you got Michael Penix and a great group of wide receivers that not too many defenses are going to be able to stop, including Michigan's, Alabama's, and Texas. Michigan has the best defense in the playoffs this year. But if they match up against Washington in the national championship, I don't think they're that deep at cornerback where they're going to be able to slow down this passing attack with a Dunze, McMillan, and Polk. People need to start giving Washington way more respect than what they have over the last couple of weeks. This is the most disrespected team in the playoffs this year, and these are my reasons why I believe the Huskies can win the 2024 national championship.